So I was born in Morocco, but as a family, we came here when I was only about 2 years old. And so throughout my whole life, even though I was raised here, I felt like I was being split between two different countries. I spent majority of my life here in Denver, Colorado, but then every year we would spend at least a month or two in Morocco. And so growing up, most of my family would come back with me and then we would go back together. Currently now I live here by myself, but I have my brother who has now recently joined me in living with me in the same city, same town, same everything. And I have my parents who go back and forth. You know, they spend some time in Morocco and then they spend some time here in Colorado, whereas my sister is also right now residing in Morocco. And so we've got various different ways of how we essentially engage with one another so that we can fill in that gap of not living with each other. But that is the beauty of having those two identities, is that you spend time in one nation and then potentially some other time in another nation. What's really, really interesting is when you live in a country for so long, you adapt to that, right? And you don't really realize that adaptation until you travel, right? And you go somewhere new and you realize that everything that from the environmental standards, environmental aspects of how you live your day to day, right? Being adapted to a culture really plays a part when you then go to a different environment, right? When you go to a different region, a different country, a different city, you start to realize that you might be doing things a little bit more differently than how they're doing things. And so that is my experience every single year whenever I go to Morocco. I live out my years here, but then when I visit home, I realize just how much American I was living. And then when I go to Morocco, I realize, I'm adapting to that now. And then I come back here and I realize how Moroccan I was living. And so it's a very, once again, bittersweet struggle of back and forth, adapting, readapting, and then essentially revisiting just the roots again and then having to adapt to that. The thing that I really love about being in Morocco is the food. The food is extremely different than how it is here. Everything they eat there is fresh from the market, and it feels like as if you're using all your senses to experience what that meal looks like, right? Very similar to our traditional dish known as couscous. Here, couscous is a simple dish that we create for dinner, right? You've got the actual couscous grain, and then you put in whatever you want to put in with it, whether it's fish, chicken, beef, you name it, right? Veggies. In Morocco, you are experiencing so many different senses as you're eating a platter of couscous because of the spices, the sauces, and overall just what is being cooked within that plate. Ramadan is very different experienced there than it is here. Ramadan here, the day goes by like this because you're working, right? You have a routine. You wake up in the morning, you go to the gym, maybe you go to work right after that. And then you come back around like 4 or 5 o'clock, and then pretty much your day's done. Your day of fasting is done because usually you break your fast around like 6 p.m. And so in Morocco, it's a little bit more different because the celebration doesn't just start and end from 6 to 7. It's from 6 to literally 3 a.m. And so that is the beauty of experiencing something as traditional as Ramadan in a different country, because you're surrounded with so much family and so many friends and so many different ways of celebrating. The day is even more fulfilling after you break your fast because you're celebrating until the next day again. And, the people there just make it worthwhile because they're all very happy. They're very excited. There's music everywhere. There's dancing everywhere. And, my favorite part is probably right after you break your fast in the evening, seeing the kids go outside and play soccer or play games, because it's a beautiful way of them also feeling fulfilled and wanting to finish out their day by having fun. One thing I really want to teach people about my Moroccan American culture, specifically the Moroccan side, is just how academic oriented Moroccans are. Moroccans are such intelligent people. And the reason why is because our culture is literally made up of having to learn so many different languages as we're being raised, right? As we're growing up, as well as being able to learn and adapt to new cultures of those languages that we're speaking in, right? For example, French is a huge language that Moroccans speak. But because of that, Moroccans know and understand and study French culture, French society, similar to Spanish, right? The Spaniards are right on top of us. And so being able to have that connection with them, we understand how to adapt to that culture. We understand what makes up that culture because we speak the language. And of course, English, right? And Arabic. And so that's something that I really, really love about being Moroccan is the multiculturalness of who we are. And from the moment we are kids all the way up to adults, we're constantly seeking knowledge. We're constantly, easy to make friends with. We're easy to be a part of different cultures, different communities. And so the aspect of adaptation is really big for us because it is truly what we are as people.